Hey, it's Leo. In the last 18 months, I founded a business that scaled to over 7 figures in annual recurring revenue. And I have goals to grow and exit this business at 8 figures one day. And the crazy part about this business is no one knows I own it. I'm not in any of the ads. I don't tell people I'm the owner when I'm in sales calls. I don't even do the sales calls anymore. And I have no business partners. And more importantly, especially the business model that I have, I've done it fully bootstrapped. So I've never raised any capital as of yet. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you 3 business principles that I've learned along the way that I think are extremely valuable, and principles that I wish I knew 18 months ago. So let's jump right into it. The first one is this: every problem has a solution. There is someone out there who has solved it, and with enough resourcefulness and patience, it will be resolved. Not only that, but whatever seems complex to you is simple for someone else. This was a huge one for me, right? I would constantly go through this cycle of suffering where I'd be faced with a problem in my business. An example I can give you is scaling ads. I think to myself, I just tried to scale ads from this much a day to this much a day, and it broke. And my ads stopped working, and my cost per bookings went through the roof, and my CPA is through the roof. There's just no way to fix this problem. And I would stress, and I have sleepless nights. And then I met someone who was in a similar niche to me and was actually a media buyer working for one of the biggest companies in this adjacent niche. And he completely shattered my limiting beliefs because he was spending 20 times more than I thought the limit was per day. And I brought him into my business. He became our media buyer. And ever since, I've not had that problem in my business. That made me realize that not only can any business problem be solved, but there's someone out there who finds resolving my problem to be simple. Because when I brought him my issues and I said, man, I can't scale because of this, and there's no way I can do this, and he just looked at me like I was silly. Like, what? It's easy. What are you talking about? Like, we're spending this much a day. Oh, you're running into this problem. There's an easy fix for that. You just do X, Y, Z. And I was like, whoa, So, this type of this principle, what it's done is not only allowed me to solve problems faster, because I very quickly go out of, oh my God, this is not going to work, and out of panic mode and straight away into resourcefulness mode. But it's just reduced my stress levels, because anytime I'm faced with a problem, and I'm constantly faced with roadblocks, that's business. You're faced with roadblocks that you need to overcome. I just remember this. And now I even think about it for my clients, our customers. For them, customer acquisition is an extremely complex thing to do. Running ads, doing marketing, hiring sales staff, these are very complex things for them to do. And when we say to them, we're going to help them generate consistent, we're going to fix their customer acquisition issue, and we talk to them about it in simple terms, they've been struggling with this for 20 years, right? Especially our niche, up until the point, the majority of them who reach out to us, when they come to us to solve the problem they have with consistent customer acquisition, they've just been relying on word of mouth and referrals and their phone ringing. So when we say to them, oh yeah, we just sign up with us and we'll consistently put you in front of this many customers, and this is what we essentially do to help fix your customer acquisition issue. Sometimes we explain it, and to us it's so simple, but for them, they're just struggling to understand how we're describing it in such a simple and easy way when it's been something they've been struggling with for so long, to the point where we actually had to change our sales script because we were getting feedback that people weren't signing up because they just thought it was too good to be true. We were oversimplifying it so much, because solving this massive problem for them after spending 18 months pouring all of our resources and energy to fix it is now a simple solution for us. For them, they have a customer acquisition issue. Signing up with us, that problem gets solved. They find it complex, we find it simple. So those are two examples of when I've been on the receiving end where I thought a problem was extremely complex, and then I spoke to someone and they found it simple. And I can also see it from my point of view, which maybe you can see it from your point of view as well, where you are able to solve a problem that is really complex for someone else that you find simple. So if you ever run into a business problem and you think to yourself, I can't see how I'm going to overcome this, there's just no way to do it, the telltale sign that you're moving in the wrong direction is when you start to blame external factors. When you start saying things like, for example, with paid ads, my market's not big enough, my niche is too small, Facebook ads don't work, Google ads don't work, YouTube ads don't work. When you start making general statements, that's when you know you've reached probably the limits of your knowledge and at fixing this problem, and you need to either go and seek the knowledge, find the knowledge somewhere of fixing it, or find the person who has fixed the problem already and finds and sees it as a simple solution. Principle number 2, approach business like a chess master. Spend the majority of your time and energy figuring out the 1% task to work on, and then make your move fast. A big mistake that I made in business is just focusing on the work, focusing on the output. So I would start my day and I would think to myself, I'm not going to sit here and spend half an hour planning it, or the day before, I'm not going to sit here and plan my day. I would think thinking strategically about what I'm going to work on as a bit of a waste of time, right? Like I'd feel guilty about it. And then what I would end up doing is just going to work. Like I just get to work. And what that would look like is opening up my Slack, opening up my emails, opening up the ad accounts, opening up our website, whatever it is, and just getting to work, going to meetings, receiving calls, handling issues, putting out fires, and I would just get to work. And what happened, essentially what happened was I would constantly find myself in a position where I was stagnating, right? And it wasn't until I really started to understand the concept of constraints in business and bottlenecks that I realized why I was stagnating and why I was always hitting a ceiling and not growing past it. And that made me realize that I have to look at life this way, and I have to look at business this way. There's an expression or a story where it's like something along the lines of, there was a man who was who said, I would rather rather than trying to hit the tree down with a blunt axe for 2 hours, I'd rather spend, an hour and a half sharpening it. I completely butchered that. My apologies. But anyways, you get the point. So the idea is to spend more time, especially when you're trying to break through 6 figures a month, and then what I'm trying to do now in this business, although it's young, we're growing quite fast and we want to grow to multi-6 figures a month. I'm spending more time really thinking about what my bottleneck is, what the move is that I need to make. And then once I've identified what that move is, I then apply like a nuclear bomb to it, like nuclear energy to it. I'm just like all in, only focusing on fixing that issue. And what that's meant is more often than previously, I'm actually moving the needle, because I'm sitting down, and rather than just working and being in reactive mode and getting nowhere, I'm going, what is really going to move the needle for the business? I've identified it, and then I've put together a strategy, and even strategically, that was the next step. So I used to think, okay, I've identified what the bottleneck is. Now I just go and I try to fix the bottleneck. But now I've even taken it a step further. I've identified the bottleneck, but then I ask myself, okay, there are 10 things that I could do to try and resolve this bottleneck. And I would write them down, and then I would ask myself, what are the highest leverage plays here? What creates the most amount of impact for the least amount of time and for the least amount of energy? And then I would go and prioritize the action steps I'm going to take in terms of where the highest leverage plays are. And ever since I've started to do that, my business has grown a lot faster. I've broken through ceilings a lot faster, and that's what I'm currently doing. So in our business, I sat down and identified, okay, a customer acquisition, we do quite well. What is our bottleneck in terms of our long-term play? What is it? What's our main issue? What would really create the biggest impact in our business? And for me, I've identified it as fixing our churn, as increasing retention to increase our lifetime value, as it creates a ripple-on effect in many different ways. If we increase our lifetime value and reduce our churn, it means we're improving our product. So we'll have more satisfied customers that will refer more, that will spend more money with us. We'll also have a higher lifetime value, which means we can, even rather than sitting there spending time trying to make our ads better, we can just increase how much money we make on the back end, and we can just simply spend more money and afford for our ads to be inefficient. So I've sat down and through really thinking about what the highest leverage play is, I've identified that to be the thing we need to focus on, and then I've sat down and ask myself, okay, what are the highest leverage plays here at tackling this churn issue? And I've been working like a madman to fix it. And then the final principle is every business is always in a gradual continuum of chaos. The goal is not to build a business without chaos, but instead to build systems to control it. In order to control the chaos, you must be outside of it and not involved in the emotions of the day-to-day. This was a lesson that took me a long time to learn. I used to feel really guilty and get really upset with myself and get really upset with my team and get really upset at my business and the niche that I was in and the industry I was in. And I was just in a constant state of being annoyed whenever things would go wrong. If a client left and I didn't expect them to leave, I would get upset. If a team member who was supposed to work didn't show up, I would get upset. If someone did something and made a decision that wasn't aligned with how I would have wanted them to make a decision, I would get upset and I would get annoyed. And then I would go into this cycle where I would just sit there and go, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with this business? What is wrong with my industry, my niche, my staff? And ultimately, I eventually learned that there's nothing wrong. Business is always going to be in chaos. There is no version of business, right? We watch things online, we only see the highlights of people. We see their numbers, their monthly revenue, their yearly revenue, their profit, their team size, their accolades. But we don't actually see the chaos that they're operating and managing every single day. For example, if you take a look into Amazon, Amazon is arguably the most successful company in the world, or one of them, right? Now, Amazon is in a constant and continuous state of chaos. If you take a look at the amount of people that are suing them, the amount of legal battles they have going on, the amount of staff issues they have, all the issues that they deal with on a day-to-day basis, even as simple as deliveries being sent to the wrong, like products being sent to the wrong home, or deliveries being sent late for their negative reviews, customer complaints. They're just in a constant state of chaos. So I used to think that the goal with business is to get to a point where my business just wouldn't have issues, right? But actually, I accepted my business will constantly have issues. What I need to focus on is building systems to control the issues. I need to actually focus on building the systems that will resolve and control the chaos. And when I identified that, I realized I would never be able to pull this off if I was involved in the day-to-day operations, right? I have to remove myself from them. And I remember the time I actually wrote this down, I was checking my Slack, all my entire team's on Slack, and I would check my Slack like a madman every 5 minutes and open it and refresh it and see the messages come through, read every message in every channel, respond quickly. And that's when I found myself in the most amount of stress, and I was thinking, I can't not open Slack. What if I miss something? What if I miss something critical? What if I have to respond to this person? What if I, can resolve a fire before it pops up? But then the big breakthrough moment for me was to stay off Slack, I shut down Slack and I just did not go on. And then I went on at the end of the day and I saw the issues, but this time when I saw the issues, I wasn't there to fix them. And rather than being the person who applied a quick, immediate Band-Aid solution to fixing the problem, because I was now outside of the chaos, I wasn't involved in the emotions, I came and I saw them from an objective point of view. And I just went, okay, so these three things happened. What systems need to be put in place to make sure that they don't happen again? And then I began to build better systems. I was able to identify where my issues are in my business, and I could build systems to actually manage the chaos itself. So if you're caught up with your emails, if your phone is constantly ringing and you're answering, and your team is constantly bothering you and asking you questions, take the gut-wrenching and nervous step to, you can start slow. Like if you're always online, just like turn your phone off for the first half of the day and tell your team, like, contact me if there's anything urgent, or I will respond to you at this time. And if it's urgent and it needs my attention right then and there, then you can call me, and you can set, for example, a favorites setting where if you're on Do Not Disturb, those calls will come through. And what you realize is when your team calls you and they tell you about an issue that they have, you'll notice that it actually wasn't really an urgent problem, and they don't even know what urgent is. And you have to now begin to redefine it for them. You know, they just come to you for everything because you've set that as a standard. They just come to you to solve everything, right? And you're not going to build a business that is going to grow and scale if that's the standard that you set. Limit yourself from answering phones, limit it from responding on Slack, limit it as much as you can from emails, from logging in, from checking how ad performance is going throughout the day when that doesn't really do anything for you, right? It's not going to matter. You're not going to influence the results. May as well just check them the next morning or the end of the day, right? Whether you check them every hour or at the end of the day, you checking them is not going to change the performance of the ads, and you're not going to sit there and make a change right then and there, right? Like, you have to allow enough time for the day to spend the money, right? So do that, and you'll feel a lot of resistance, and you'll feel quite anxious, but only positive things will come on the back of it. So that is my 3 lessons. I've got more, and I'll share more as time goes on. That's it for me today. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment section below. I'll respond to everyone. Until next time, take care.